This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live, why abortion facilities are closing, particularly in post-Roe America, and especially this year. We've had closures in California, Vermont, Illinois, Michigan. Of course, all those are very pro-life states, so it's explainable. But we will do a deep dive into why this is happening, if it could happen where you live, and use some of the things from Planned Parenthood's own annual report to highlight how more abortion facilities will close. Someone who never closes and is open 24/7, like IHOP, is joining me, and that is Mr. Steve Carlin.
Always open, always ready to serve.
Always alert. Do you like IHOP? That seems like a northern thing.
I used to, but I'm not a big breakfast guy, which I think is also the case with you, right?
No, I don't eat breakfast. No.
Okay.
You agree? No, I don't eat breakfast.
We both don't eat breakfast.
I don't eat breakfast. Yeah, however I was supposed to word that. Unless, and we're going to bring in Ramona Trevino, unless there is a very worthy breakfast taco situation. Like a real one, like migas and there's
where you're really
multiple selections of salsa.
You're eating lunch or dinner, but they throw a little bit of eggs in it and then tell you it's breakfast. I'm not going to eat breakfast today, and somebody shows up. There's actually a great place here called Coco Loco La Familia, and their breakfast tacos are just absurd. The tortillas, the thick tortillas, with the flour on. Yeah, it's unbelievable. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Are you hungry?
Now I am.
Now I am. Yeah. I talked myself into that. Okay. Before we get into this, I wanted to ask Steve, now that fall is approaching, which we're glad for because we probably have 2 months of 100-degree heat.
It's still July, mind you. Don't run my summer off too quickly.
Yeah, but I like to do that. But when are you like, I can't pretend anymore? It's over.
So once we hit the second half of August, I start to just try to not think of things, isolate myself, not look at any back to school
Don't
sales.
talk to my wife or children.
Yeah. And then once Labor Day happens, and it's like, well, it's over.
So what are like the temperatures typically? Not on a weird year, but like Labor Day.
Probably be pretty nice. Probably like lower 70s, upper 60s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you're into the 60s.
Yes.
Because I think I've mentioned, and I loved this. I did the Green Bay kickoff. I think it was 2010. Jim Bull was there. So it was when he was leading. But it was September 22nd when I arrived. I remember that. And full-blown, like, yellow trees. And I had just come from 98-degree Houston. And I was just, like, so excited. And it was, like, 48 degrees. It was awesome. And some of the Green Bay people already, like, some of the leaves had fallen off.
Oh, yeah.
Which I guess is obviously typical in Green Bay. But I'm just like, this is awesome. Number one, we won't have this at all in Texas. Number two, it's just September. It was such a swing. It was like a 45-degree temperature change. And it was awesome.
Fall in Wisconsin is fantastic. Like, as much as we kind of joke about how I hate winter coming as early as July, fall is great. The only thing that's bad about it is that winter is coming.
Yeah.
When does the depression set in, Steve?
Well, hold on. Let me. I've known Steve a long time. Let me fill something in for Ramona. The depression is always there.
Ah, gotcha.
It's like seething, but you know how you can have like a good sauce and it's simmering or it's boiling over? That's just the differences.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Continue.
The saddest day of the year is New Year's Day. Everybody else is turning over a new leaf. They've made resolutions, and I'm thinking there's nothing to look forward to until Easter.
And I love New Year's Eve. I love New Year's Day.
I love New Year's Eve, but
yeah. But New Year's Day and early January, I don't know. It's exciting. This sounds so pathetic, but we start getting tired of the cold like in late January, even though it's like we've had 3 weeks of this.
Yep.
But in February, we always get this swing where it'll pop up to like 77 degrees and be sunny. I remember one time I had a buddy in from Virginia, and he was coming down to see me, and it was February. I was like, we could go golfing. He's like, oh my gosh, that would be awesome. And it was like perfect weather, 74 degrees.
My February, where I'm at in North Texas, like north of Dallas, my Februaries always end up being that last little, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So we could have a beautiful sunny 70-degree day, or we could have like, Ice-mageddon.
Yeah.
I remember that because when the Packers won the Super Bowl at the Cowboys Stadium, there was a lot of bad weather.
There was Ice-mageddon. Yeah. I went into labor on Ice-mageddon. That whatever February.
That was a
year
freak
was.
thing, though. That was like a once in a lifetime thing.
But not for me where I'm at.
I actually felt bad for Jerry Jones because he's trying to highlight the new stadium.
I liked it.
Why?
Because he deserved it.
I just wanted to remind everybody that the Packers won the Super Bowl at the Cowboys Stadium. That's really what this was about. Yeah.
That's what this was about. Yeah.
Ironic.
Somehow it came back to
Cowboys.
Steve.
Because they weren't there.
Right. But still, felt like it's like y'all, and this is where I've already praised Green Bay, so I'll end that. We go up there, and you go into Lambeau, which is awesome, and I've paid my respects. It's like the shrine. It's like if athletics had St. Peter's Basilica, it would be Lambeau Field. That's the biggest compliment I can get. But everybody's in gym balls. Like, I was at the Ice Bowl. And I'm like, okay, great. But, like, they have the picture of Bart Starr at the Ice Bowl. And he's, like, holding the ball over, and they won. What did they win, like 12-6 or something? I'm sure you remember the score. And they're all like, we beat you on the Ice Bowl. And I'm like, wow. It was -40 or whatever it was, and you barely beat a bunch of Texans by, 1 inches. It wasn't like they threw like a double reverse screen and won 38-3. It was just like, y'all should have killed us. Our players had never been exposed to that, and they run around and brag about the Ice Bowl because it's a huge victory. I'm like, probably Lombardi should have been fired after that game.
This is what the kids call cope.
We'll move on. Some people may get their feelings hurt. Okay. So here are the states. Abortion facilities are closing at a historic pace. This with the backdrop of abortions going up because of the rise of abortion pills. But most of this, I believe, and we will break this down, is due to years of Planned Parenthood doing two things: not having effective leadership and not actually preparing for the possibility that Roe would be overturned, and sure as heck not preparing for the possibility that they would be defunded. And I think that trifecta has caused a lot of these centers to close. We're looking at New York, Illinois, California, Michigan, Iowa, Vermont, and Minnesota. All of those.
Counting.
And counting. So when the end of the world came for those, I think, misguided pro-lifers who said, the overturning of Roe is terrible, it's going to get worse. And then you have places like Michigan, which I would say Michigan Right to Life is the best right to life group in the country. They're fantastic. They're wonderful. They did their best, and it failed. And Michigan put abortion in their state constitution. So that's the end of the world. But for 40 Days for Life, we never say it's the end of the world because it doesn't matter where you are. This is market-driven. If women choose life, you don't have any money, and you'll close. And they can have abortion up to 40 weeks and after birth and celebrate it and pat themselves on the back, but they still have to make money off of this. And that's why it's an awesome victory to have these states where abortion is in the Constitution, particularly Michigan, where they voted after the fall of Roe, and they were like, yes, and Michigan stands for women, and their governor was all excited, and they're closing abortion facilities. So, New York, we've talked a lot about that. We're going to get into all these. I think the big surprise, if you can't keep an abortion facility open in Vermont, it's really, really, because there's not a lot of them. Like some of these places, they can say, well, we're going to consolidate, even though that's not the case with some of them. But Vermont? Is it Burlington? It's not Burlington.
St. Johnsbury.
That's it. They have some cool names of cities, actually, in Vermont, as crazy as it is. Beautiful state. Okay. So here's one of the reasons. Let's look at state legislation. So Guttmacher says the number of brick and mortar clinics providing abortion care in the United States declined by 5%, a net loss of 42 abortion facilities between 2020 and March of 2024. During this period, much of the decrease in clinic numbers was due to the cessation of abortion care in the 14 states with total abortion bans. So that makes sense.
Yeah, but what doesn't make sense is the claim that we repeatedly hear that, well, abortion's only 3% of what Planned Parenthood does. I think they upped it to 4% of what Planned Parenthood does. Okay, so this is just some minor little fringe part of your business, and then bam, Roe v. Wade is overturned, states enact pro-life protections for unborn children, and suddenly you can't even keep the doors open?
Well, yeah, this is like McDonald's saying, selling French fries is only 3% of what we do, and then the government says you can't sell fries, you have to put pistachios with the Big Macs, and they're like, well, that was only a small part of our business, and 92% of all McDonald's close overnight. You're like, well, I thought that was just 3%. So that's been, the case with them for a while. Iowa Public Radio said Planned Parenthood reports the number of abortions it's performed in Iowa dropped 60% in the 6 months following the Heartbeat Act going into effect. This is why I'm a big fan of the heartbeat bills, not because I really am fine with babies dying at 5 weeks. That's not the case. I want everybody to live. But it essentially ends abortion because they don't either know that they're pregnant, or by the time that they find out, there's a heartbeat. It also, from a messaging standpoint, is so positive because it humanizes the baby, and it's like, if we can detect a heartbeat, we shouldn't kill the baby. Yes, we should. It's just a hard argument, which is why, frankly, a lot of state-level Democrats, I know here in Texas, supported our heartbeat bill and other heartbeat bills across the country.
So we've talked a lot about how many Planned Parenthoods have closed in Iowa. Do you know how many are left?
4?
2.
Whoa!
This is a state where 15, 20 years ago, Planned Parenthood was expanding more aggressively than anywhere else. This is what the late, great Sue Thayer taught us about how there were new Planned Parenthoods and webcam abortions, and they're on the move. And now they barely have a presence in the state of Iowa.
Wow. Yeah, in the 2010s to 14s-ish, that time, I think Iowa was the 4th largest Planned Parenthood affiliate in the country, which is very impressive and shocking. It was Jill June, a name hard to forget. She was their CEO. That's who Sue worked for. And Jill June wanted to replace Cecile Richards.
I didn't know that part.
So she was a climber. So she convinced Nebraska and parts of, I think even Illinois, basically she was a kingdom builder. I guess I shouldn't say that. But she is expanding Planned Parenthood of Greater Iowa that wasn't just Iowa, and just created this monster basically to build a resume so she could, she's a climber, so she could take over as CEO. Looking back, now she did some stupid interviews, but at least she did interviews. Looking back, she should have replaced Cecile Richards with what she did with Iowa, and now that she's not there, they're going under.
It's really remarkable, and I think it's just a national success story, and all of the pro-lifers, all of the 40 Days for Life teams in Iowa should be very proud of what has happened the last 15 years.
It's amazing. But they do say it's not just the bans, it's compliance with pro-life laws.
Yeah, it takes resources.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have a full protection legally for unborn children in the law, but you've got waiting periods, and you've got parental notification, and you've got this, and you've got that. All the different pro-life laws kind of add up, and it's death by 1,000 cuts. In this case, I guess life by 1,000 cuts, but it's difficult to comply. They have to have more staff to comply, and that puts a financial strain on. And so every little pro-life protection makes a difference. Obviously, we want the big ones, but the little ones can help too.
If you were managing one of these places in Iowa, let's say you said, I hate Steve, and I'm no longer pro-life, I'm quitting, I'm going back to Planned Parenthood, and they sent you to Iowa.
I only hate Steve, though, in this scenario.
Okay, right? Okay, great, thank you.
I said it, I did it.
I don't care about Wisconsin. The Packers should have beat the Cowboys in the Ice Bowl. Isn't the list of okay, I'm managing a Planned Parenthood in 2025, and this is a pain to deal with. Isn't that list significantly longer than it was in 2015?
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean, this is one of the side benefits of 40 Days for Life is we're like a pest, and you got to kind of deal with us just a personnel thing, a morale thing, even if you're not driving the abortion numbers down, right? We hear leaders complain about that all the time. They're doing more abortions than ever. They have to deal with you, and that costs money. Maybe they don't need to hire security because we're nice, wonderful people, but they feel they have to. So it's just this added stuff. But when you get into like post-Roe, certainly with the defunding situation and pro-life laws and heartbeat bills, it's just got to be a pain. Don't you need to hire more with less money?
You would think so. Yeah. Well, and you mentioned we're a pest, and you would hire more security and all of that. But what we see too is that the uptick in clinic escorts too. So that's good for us. So the more they respond with clinic escorts, and the clinic escorts are always making a circus out of everything. So I think they think they're doing something good with the clinic escorts, and then it ends up turning out being bad for them.
If I were managing a Planned Parenthood, I wouldn't want to deal with the escorts because most of them are screwballs, and they're just the weird activist people.
They make things worse, which
do.
is good for us.
Absolutely. But it also just takes away from we are a professional medical establishment, and we treat patients and women, and then you just get the weird. We had a couple out here. We don't know their names. I think Mary Lisa knew their names. We called them the make-out couple because they just made out the whole time. It was awkward, like on abortion days. And we're just like, even if we believed what you believe and we were like, we're going to volunteer here, we're not going to be groping each other. Like, number one, it's really hot out here. Number two,
it's too hot to grope.
It's just not like these women are coming in having abortions, and and they were like 30, like grad students or something, or older PhD students or something. It was just they weren't married. It was just, I don't know. So that's my experience coming up early in the movement. But the escorts that I've seen when I visit campaigns, you're just sitting here going, I don't think you're adding to the value here. Did you ever have escorts?
Thankfully, no.
I didn't think you did. Because your location was too small?
Yeah. Well, and we didn't do abortions.
You didn't do the surgical abortions? I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing. Okay. In Illinois, abortions dropped in 2024. And, of course, the media reported that.
Yeah, it didn't make any headlines. We hear all about the abortion numbers whenever and wherever they go up. But Illinois, mind you, this is not just a blue state. This is a state that was a sanctuary state, a state that was going to draw women in from Missouri, and they were going to draw women in from Tennessee, and the entire Midwest was going to be coming to Illinois for abortions, and their number dropped in 2024. So our reason number one that abortion facilities close, legislation, but that's not the case in Illinois. Reason number two is just a drop in business.
There's another thing going on, and I want to ask you about this because you have yet to be deported. We should add. Congratulations.
Thank you.
As of the recording of this
podcast, Ramona is still in America. Barely. It's not going to last very long. So here's my theory, and this is why the defunding of Planned Parenthood is so great. So very quickly, the left traded abortion, trans people, drag queens in front of kindergartners, Pride Month for immigration. So they just swapped. They were like, okay, this didn't work. Kamala didn't win. It's getting a little weird. The gays are not happy with the trans people. The trans people are going after the kids. The gays are going after the kids. The feminists aren't even relevant anymore. Screaming about how great abortion is at 40 weeks isn't working. But evil Trump is running around deporting everybody. That's going to be our new thing. And I think on a culture war front, that's their focus. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons we see a lot of this. I mean, just the 2020, well, actually since the fall of Roe, it was just constant onslaught of attention on abortion, which was great for 40 Days for Life and certainly great for media coverage and bringing attention to abortion. What we hoped would happen, which is if you make abortion the center of like the topic, right? We get to talk about it, which is why we wrote the sequel to What to Say When. And if we talk about it, we're going to win that. Like, that's good for us because they actually can't talk about it. They were dependent on saying, oh, it's the law of the land, Roe v. Wade, everybody go away. And that worked and was really smart. Now that they can't do that, they're just like, when should we limit abortions? Never. Okay, you're a lunatic. What if, like, the baby somehow survives the abortion? This is between a woman and her doctor. Never. And you're just like, okay, we're in an infanticide land now. And I just think they got away from that. And now it's all immigration. You never really heard Planned Parenthood talking about immigration.
No.
That's like a new thing.
No.
Unless they were like, we're going to the border to provide abortions. It all tied back to abortion.
Yeah, they're very distracted right now. And this is the problem. I think a lot of this goes back. We had earlier this summer, the Sliding Doors podcast about what happens, what would have turned out differently if this had happened or if that had happened, these key seminal inflection points throughout the course of the last 30 years. And this is a big one to me. Planned Parenthood made a key choice. Cecile Richards left, and they decided we're going to go with Leanna Wen. She's a technocrat. She's a technician. She's a professional. She's a
doctor.
She's a doctor, and she had a vision of making Planned Parenthood, first and foremost, a medical organization.
She's also Chinese, so she was a minority. Mm-hmm. And it was just, she fit. Okay, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all good. But it was like they made a choice, and they were going to go, yes, we would have a key disagreement. We don't think abortion is healthcare because it's not. And they would say abortion is healthcare. But they were very looking to professionalize and become very medical. And that lasted very short amount of time. She's out shortly after she takes a job, and Planned Parenthood runs as hard as possible in the exact opposite direction. Forget about professionalism. Forget about the technocracy. We're going all in as an activist organization. And now that means that Planned Parenthood isn't just abortion, it's also immigration, it's unions, it's every last progressive cause. And they don't really know what their mission is anymore.
Yeah, and that has been to our advantage. And frankly, that's just the wrong time for them to go through an identity crisis.
Yeah.
Okay. Jessica Barquest, I think I'm saying that right. She's the Vice President of Public Affairs for Planned Parenthood of Vermont. Here's her quote. Patient demand just isn't there in the way that could combat some of the other challenges of rural healthcare delivery.
Seems big.
Supply and demand, baby.
This is so encouraging. It's Vermont. They're saying there's not demand. All of the sort of hand-wringing we see about, well, what about this? What about that? Are the number of abortions going up? They're saying the demand is going down. And
you can't say that.
Right.
You can't say that. Like McDonald's can come out and say, in the current economic climate, the competition is as fierce as ever, or whatever. They just can't come out and say, I don't know, people are all dieting. They don't want McDonald's. It's really sad.
They used to know this. There was a stretch where Planned Parenthood would not announce it was closing a facility. It's like, we are relocating. Wait, you're relocating to a location that's been open for the last 25 years. Right. That's not a relocation. You're just sending people to the Planned Parenthood that didn't close and go out of business. Now they've kind of even lost their messaging on that.
If I were Jessica, the line that I know I would say, and I'm probably 85% of Planned Parenthood executives would say, is obviously under the current fear that the Trump administration has brought to women, getting proper health care is women are more hesitant than ever. Just whatever. Like a sentence that nobody knows what it means, but Trump's the problem. You don't come out and say, we sell kites and nobody wants our kites.
Blame Trump.
When all else fails, blame Trump. Mm-hmm. The Republicans did that. That was all we heard about, how evil Obama was. And it's like, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to run Romney. Okay, what's Romney going to do? Obama's bad.
Yeah.
So It is. It's they're falling into that trap, and it's really, really good for us. This is the most profound thing and should really get the listeners excited. We've covered it briefly before on the podcast. The drop in donations. Planned Parenthood lost 73,000 donors, individual donors last year. And I want to make it clear, because somebody may be listening and go, well, that just means it's because they have 2 billion donors. And this is like nothing. And it's like, no, they don't. This is why, and when I was at the White House a couple of weeks ago, this came up because they were asked, it was on the defunding of Planned Parenthood, and they were asking about this, and they didn't know it. And I said, the behind the scenes thing with Planned Parenthood is that they've lost 73,000 donors, which made the government funding no longer a third of their funding, but half their funding. So not if, but when the administration in Congress defunds them, it has such a huge impact. Now, if they had proper leadership, they would be able to raise money off the defunding. But they're not doing that. They should have been doing that the last 2 years. Certainly should have been doing it the last year when it was like on the table. Because the minute Vance in October of 24, it may have been September, I think it was like October 3rd or 4th, because we were excited about it because we kind of needed to hear it. But Vance said we need to defund Planned Parenthood. If we're elected, we're going to defund Planned Parenthood. That, as you know, that's 1 million fundraising letters for Planned Parenthood.
Yeah. Should have been. But here's another thing that's good news is we can talk about, they were down 73,000 donors. Maybe those people are just donating $5. If you look at the affiliate revenue, this is where the abortions are actually done, where the so-called services are provided. The Planned Parenthood affiliates themselves, contributions last year down 35%, more than a third decrease in the funding coming into the affiliates. That is not sustainable, obviously.
And this has been ongoing, right? Like this has been a downward trend for a while now, where they've been losing.
Well,
donorship.
after Roe was overturned, you had what they called the rage donations, and those.
I remember those. I made a contribution.
Yeah,
in honor of Steve's rage.
That's right. So we see the Guardian here. I don't know why most of it, I hate the Guardian, but we get more relevant abortion information.
I love it. The Guardian covers 40 Days for Life. BBC covers 40 Days for Life. And it's just funny. I think part of it is England is such a toilet that they're like, let's pick on the Americans to draw attention away from ourselves.
So they've got an article here analyzing this. It said, after Roe fell, millions of dollars in donations gushed into the coffers of abortion rights organizations. I love that. I've only ever heard pro-lifers use the word, the abortion industry's coffers.
Coffers is fun.
Like, who uses that word? But in the years since, much of that money has dried up, especially funds going to independent clinics and abortion funds, which help patients pay for the procedure and logistical expenses that may surround it, such as traveling and lodging. Another quote here from the article. Another source of strain is fatigue among would-be donors.
Yeah, buddy.
The Abortion Care Network has for several years run a fundraising campaign called Keep Our Clinic. In 2022, the campaign raised $5 million. In 2023, it raised $3 million.
And you remember in Madison when that huge orthopedic surgical center had to do their campaign that said, Save Our Clinic. Yeah, it's just very typical in medical, the cancer research people, they're always doing Save Our Clinic. It's just great. When you go to legitimate healthcare, it's like they don't have escorts. They're not weird. They don't do Save Our Clinic. They don't stomp their foot about how they're actually real medicine. This is great.
Well, and when I think about all of this, it makes me stop and question, okay, how much of this is obviously we're winning. We have more pro-lifers in this younger generation. And then I also have to look at it and go, well, what's up with Planned Parenthood? Like, did they just get lazy? Did they get overconfident and, prideful in thinking that abortion was never going to go away, that people were always going to love abortion? You know what I mean? Like, I have to question, why are you losing so badly? Which is great, right? I love it. Remember when I left Planned Parenthood, the first thing I said is I want to see them gone. Like, I want to see Planned Parenthood just vanish.
But in the back of your mind, you're going, that's never going to happen.
I think in the back of my mind, I thought it would at some point, but I didn't think it would happen so quickly.
Right.
And it just seems like it's spiraling. And I look at him like, why are they doing such a horrible job at not? But I think what it boils down to is they're losing the argument.
Yeah,
they're losing the argument. They can't find a reason to convince people of the lie anymore.
Plus, on that note, because the listener may be like, well, what does this mean? What this is not just our cool phrase of the beginning of the end of abortion, but for abortion to end in America, Planned Parenthood has to go away. That's number one. They're so big, so powerful, and as they go, so goes the abortion industry. But what we're seeing is truly the beginning of the end of abortion because they are crumbling. Now, how fast and what happens politically in the next decade and all of that. But what is definitely possible is ending abortion in the United States of America because of these comments that we're getting of the demand, the supply, the fact that the younger people, I do think that this whole, I had a picture of my own ultrasound. It's just abortion's not aging well in the United States.
And more young people are becoming more conservative, too.
For sure.
Yeah.
And more politicians are getting least interested. With the defunding of Planned Parenthood, they're not going to have the political clout that they've had. So you're going to see politicians, I'm not going to say they're going to just are joining 40 Days for Life. You know, we're not going to see like Schumer out there. But they don't have to say all this stuff. Planned Parenthood got where they got because they have money and they funnel it to Democrats. And a lot of that was tax dollars. That's gone. So I don't have to listen to you. You better go stand up for women's rights. Why? What are you going to do? You're not donating to me. This group is, and they want me to talk about the environment or immigration or trans. So it's really, they're just not as popular and they don't have the political clout. And I think people like you and Sue and Abby are examples too, in that I'd be very interested, and we'll never get these real numbers, of just their overall turnover of losing talent and losing effective, well-spoken leaders and managers. I think that's a huge problem. That's probably the elephant in the room that they know and we don't.
Oh, it's 100% the problem.
Nobody wants to work here?
No, well, they just don't get the talent. That's it.
The era of invincibility is gone. I mean, I think the reason why some pro-lifers, and I'll put myself in this basket, a few years ago didn't think that Roe v. Wade would be overturned is it just sort of, or that Planned Parenthood could be defunded. They're sort of like, well, I mean, it's Planned Parenthood. They always find a way. They always come out on top. Somebody will do something and save them. And this is like the Miracle on Ice team against the Soviets, or it's like, you're going up against Mike Tyson and you don't have a chance, and then you land a punch, and then like, how are you
going to do that without going into Rocky IV? It's Drago. It's when he finally slugs Drago and he's bleeding. He's like, he's just a man. He's not a machine.
There you go.
And another great analogy is when they finally get a hit on the Predator. I think that was 1989, the original Predator. And Arnold does just the brilliant, if it bleeds, we can kill it. I don't have a good Arnold.
I was going to go with the Little Giants.
That's not even close to as cool as Predator or Drago. Stop it. We have listeners.
There's one time. Just one time.
Don't bring the Little Giants in here. But that's true. And they were Predator, and they definitely were Drago, and just the money, the influence, the talent, the abortion numbers themselves, the surgical numbers, just crazy. And they're never going to go away. And that's just, we're really not even at the point of Predator or Drago. I mean, now we're like in the later rounds of Rocky IV.
It's fascinating too, because I think there was a while where you talk about the shift to immigration. Even amongst progressives, there tends to be this hierarchy of priorities. And so abortion pills and birth control bills are bad for the environment. Progressives love the environment. No, somehow or another, sexual perversion trumped the environment. And now that's just not the case. Now this is just one of their issues. It's not the top of the food chain anymore.
So what they did is they experimented with making abortion a religion and a sacrament. And they did it pretty abruptly, basically to win elections in post-Roe America. They'd never done that before. It was just like, this is 2020. Women need access to health care. Come on. It was this condescending thing. And then they started shouting because of the overturning of Roe. And they made it their religion and their sacrament, and that didn't work. It's like getting burned by the stove, and they fled. And now they've gone back to their bread and butter, which is we worship ourselves and the earth. And this environment thing, it's really, and this is we don't talk a whole lot about the environment, but when you think the world's going to end because of climate change, it's hard to compete with that. And I've had some of these conversations, and this is where most of those people are pro-abortion. We don't need to protect life if we don't have Earth. I can't really argue with that. I mean, if the guy really believes that the Earth's going to end in 2 years or 3 years because we don't all have Teslas, even though Elon went from being holy to evil in the environmentalist view, I can't compete with that. It's late-term abortion is an evil. You're so lost, man. No, all this is gone, and you're like, what? The Ice Age. I thought we were heating up. I mean, we're going to explode, whatever the new thing is, because we can't say global warming.
How dare you? How dare you?
The deserts are shrinking. Shut up. The forests are growing. The rainforests are growing. Shut up. Why is the world going to end again? Because the UN said so. And you can't compete with that. You can get mad, and a lot of people get mad, and a lot of people just stand up and say it's a hoax, but that's really, I don't know how to get your issue. So that's what the left is dealing with. So that's what Planned Parenthood is dealing with. Women are under attack. We don't even need a drive to go get abortions. They're definitely for the pills, even though I don't know how you don't use fossil fuels and ship the pills. But am I wrong on that? The environment thing is a huge deal. And I was I think naive for a decade of how much this is. And part of it is going over for work to Europe, where you're like, oh, this is, they tossed Catholicism in the toilet, flushed it, and they picked up the environment. And this is their God.
Yeah, they're willing to let their people freeze if they can save a couple pounds of fossil fuels.
Even in Colombia, you can only drive your car a couple of every other day. So, there's these motorcycles everywhere in Bogota. And I mean, they're everywhere. And one of the Colombian leaders explained it to me. So you can't drive your car every day, which is insane. And then I'm like, how in the world? The Colombian government is so scattered. How would they even know? But anyways, there's some way, whatever. So they all get motorcycles, and they drive those on the days that they can't drive their car. That's why there's so many motorcycles in Bogota. I was like, this is totally a good explanation.
It's an indirect population control. You don't have kids if you have to do all your...
No, you can't put a kid on a motorcycle.
Why not?
I don't know. But they just it is.
Size, you can just only fit
strap them onto the handlebars.
A family of 8.
Yeah, put all my kids on a Harley. Although they don't have Harleys down there. Okay.
I think my boxing analogy, I distracted us from our staffing problems, reason why abortion facilities are closing. One of the things that I think is important to discuss when it comes to defunding, it's not just you have bam, Planned Parenthood is defunded and the money's cut off. There's all these different streams of funding. There's grants, there's Title X funding. And so Trump, even prior to defunding Planned Parenthood, big picture in the big, beautiful bill, had the ability to do things like freeze Title X funding. And so this is something that just the Title X alone costs Planned Parenthood of Michigan 16% of its budget. The full defunding is going to take more away. And in fact, we saw this as the case in Utah, where Trump froze their Title X funding. It cost them $2.8 million, and they closed 2 facilities in Logan and St. George, Utah, effective May 2nd. So even before the defunding, there's partial defundings going on and state-level defundings going on. And it's a pretty comprehensive picture. It gets pretty complex and complicated. But even before, I'm repeating myself here, but I think it bears repeating. Even without the full defunding, Trump and the states have the ability to shift, freeze, or limit funding, and it's already led to closed facilities.
This is why this is a good time to state, no matter what people think of him, no matter how you evaluate the many missteps that he's stuttered upon throughout his political life, it is absolutely, it can't be stated the level of effectiveness that Donald Trump has been as a pro-life president. Now, part of that is funny because people just totally criticized him in 2015 and 16 when he was running. But what an absolute disaster he has been. I cannot think of another Republican, including Ronald Reagan, because people throw him out there a lot. And I'm like, he didn't do squat for the unborn. I'm sorry. He's got a couple of great quotes, and I'm sure the sentiment was there. And part of it was the abortion industry wasn't as monstrous as it is now. But This is not even close. Forget the Supreme Court. That was huge, right? If he just did that alone, he'd be the most pro-life president ever. To defund Planned Parenthood is something we've said at this table, and we've said for years, no Republican's ever going to do that. For him to defund Planned Parenthood internationally for his first term and his second term, to do what he's done domestically, it's actually unbelievable. Now, people can't stand his personality, and so that kind of gets in the way of it. But if George W. Bush had done this, I mean, they would have been like, he's now the third person of the Trinity. We're kicking out the Holy Spirit. It's Father, Son, and Bush. I mean, it would just, people would have like, it would have been unbelievable. And if you just look at your issue, whether it's the environment or oil and gas or immigration or whatever, the pro-life movement, to me, has absolutely zero to actually complain about when it comes to Trump. It's just, there's nothing else. I mean, he messed up the IVF thing, and he fumbled around at parts of the election, kind of corrected most of it, except the IVF part. But it's just been unbelievable. And when you look at these stats, this is the podcast to help you end abortion where you live. If you want to close your abortion facility, you don't bow at the altar of Trump, but he's helping you do that. Because of this, because money matters in closing your abortion facilities. And this is why the defunding is, blue states like Washington are cutting
Washington State.
Washington State, they're cutting abortion.
This is one of those where I click the link and then did I read that right? Click the link again. Yes, Washington State cutting significant funding for abortion.
I've gotten criticized a lot more than normal on being kind of positive this year. When Roe fell, we were like, yes, praise God and all that. And some people were like, you guys are so naive, man. An end is coming. That's, I guess, a negative pro-life leader guy who, I don't know where he's from, Mississippi, I guess. But, well, that'd be more, but whatever. So the whole like, y'all are all sunshine, aren't you? I get that a lot. And I'm like, hell yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say. If you look at the stats, I guess we could do the Nick Saban thing where his team is up 35-0 at halftime and be like, you guys suck and all that. But I mean, internally as an organization, it's not like we're sitting back going, well, nothing to do. That's not the case. We have huge challenges, more probably now than ever because of the high demand for 40 Days for Life. But as far as a movement, the success is unbelievable. And it is good news, and the pills are a problem, and we're doing certain things to address that. And, there are major, major issues. But when you look at the whole, like 5 years ago, much less 20 years ago, much less the 90s, which is when we kind of came into the pro-life movement, like we were in high school, and you're just like, the world's evil, Clinton's president, they want, partial birth abortion was the big issue then. We're just so far from our inability to have any hope for victory.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I think the way I always try to reason it in my head is that everybody is used to movies, and great, we're an hour and 45 minutes into the movie, and everybody lives happily ever after. And probably when the movie is made in the future about the end of abortion, like the overturning of Roe v. Wade may be like the climax of it, and then in the credits they're like, and it took another 11 years, but finally abortion came to an end. Well, those 11 years were still a fight, and we're not out of that fight. We're going to keep on fighting. But the biggest battle that we have been working for so long has been won for 3 years, and now we're seeing another big battle, the defunding, and now we're seeing the weakening of Planned Parenthood. So this isn't a movie. It's not wrapped up tidily in less than 2 hours, but we are definitely in experiencing victories repeatedly.
There's a lot of writing on the wall too.
Yeah.
I was young and stupid and therefore totally shocked. This sounds so stupid. I was shocked that Obama won in 2008 and beat McCain. McCain was one of the worst presidential candidates ever. Literally, his base was only excited about his VP candidate. I mean, it was just odd. And most of the people, typically in an election, you're like, who's he running with? Nobody's super excited about Pence or Dan Quayle or Gore or, So I was shocked. And if you just go back and look, after postmortem, it's like the writing was on the wall. Of course, Obama was going to. And I feel like the pushback of like, it doesn't matter, none of this matters. You're like, you're not reading the stats from Planned Parenthood. We're not on pro-life blogs with people being like, hey man, I think God's on the move, we're gonna win. These are statistics, and God is on the move, and we are gonna win, by the way. But like you saying, I had to click on it because it said the state of Washington. Like that just makes no sense 10 years ago.
Right.
And for us, part of it is like it doesn't make sense now, but it actually does because things have changed so much very, very quickly. And I just think that the writing is on the wall.
It has been on the wall for a long time.
Yeah.
Even when I worked for Planned Parenthood, the writing was on the wall. Like I didn't know it, right? I wasn't aware, but you could tell there was a sense of desperation, just in our own like selling of contraception. Like even just that.
And you left in 11. So Obama,
14 years ago.
Obama's there. God bless you, Planned Parenthood. He's doing his thing. The funding's going up. He's coasting to re-election. We didn't really know that, but he was. That's shocking to hear that because in 2011, I would have been like, I mean, we weren't even back then saying this is the beginning of the end of abortion. Like, it's just one of those like, we're going to keep going. And, it's great.
And in 2011, when I left, that's when our governor, who was the governor at that time, Perry, defunded Planned Parenthood. And that was the reason or the excuse they gave for my former facility shutting down, which made zero sense.
Yeah.
Something that...
He was great. Rick Perry's a great guy.
Something that also has mattered here is inflation. And obviously everybody's felt the toll of inflation, but the abortion providers are complaining that there are decreasing insurance reimbursement rates. So that's private insurance, that's Medicaid, it's whatever. And they'll say, well, the insurance reimbursement rates are decreasing. They're not paying as much for the same services as they used to. And that's not generally actually the case. It just means that inflation grew even faster. Inflation, at least in the medical field, grew faster than the reimbursement rates grew. As the co-executive director of the Abortion Care Network, Aaron Grant, said, it's gotten more expensive to provide care. Taking a big toll.
Totally. And the mismanagement, they overexpanded. So this is NPR. Planned Parenthood's National Federation brings in hundreds of millions of dollars a year, the majority of which is spent on policy and legal efforts rather than state-level medical services.
Flush.
That doesn't help the donor base.
No.
Fundraising emails like that, and maybe that explains the 73,000 donors. Why in the world would NPR report that? I mean, we know they're fans of Planned Parenthood. Okay. Asked whether Planned Parenthood's national funding structure needs to change, Planned Parenthood Michigan CEO Thornton Greer said, I think that it needs to be looked at. In other words, we want that money.
Yeah.
Quit giving it to Kamala so she loses. This is another thing that we've just mentioned about their influence politically going down significantly if they get defunded. Here's another NPR. Some abortion rights supporters question whether leaders are prioritizing patient care for the most vulnerable populations. Remember, it's Ramona, that's the blacks and the Mexicans. I just want to point that out in case you're not familiar with that. Planned Parenthood of Michigan isn't cutting executive pay, even as it reduces staff by 10% and shuts down brick and mortar abortion facilities in areas already facing health care shortages. Is there a part of America that has a healthcare shortage? I know there are, like some places if you have cancer, you have to travel, all that, but you just don't hear that term from other areas of medicine. Healthcare shortage.
It's like there's a supply of healthcare and it's in like a silo somewhere and they've run out.
They've run out. I mean, but in Vermont, nobody wants them. So
right.
I guess it's only in
So this is the funny thing here, right? Is they're saying on one hand, we're only quoting Planned Parenthood advocates at this point. We are closing facilities because we can't keep up with demand. Also, we're closing facilities because there's not enough demand. And I can't think of another business where they have to close down because there's too much demand for their ability to keep up. Normally, you build another factory or you expand your location or you start a franchising model or something like that. They're like, oh, we're so popular, I guess we can't keep the doors open.
This is great. I've been waiting for that. I just realized this. This is the Abortion Care Network Communications Director. And he's on the wrong side. He's Jay Thibodeau. He's from the Bayou. What's he doing? Thibodeau. He's not supposed to be a pro-abort. The Cajuns are all pro-life. Louisiana is one of the most pro-life states. He went to the other side. Quit eating the crawdads. Whether it's abortion bans or extremists outside of the clinic or the financial challenges that come along with having to shift services, move a clinic, comply with new regulations, clinics have been under an enormous amount of financial pressure. So
extremists.
That's
outside of the clinic.
Abortion Care Network. Yeah, we need to take that. We need to do a fundraising letter with that quote. There we go. Okay. This is great. Classic Jim Ball in Green Bay. He said, "Doctor, do you think the presence of 40 Days for Life vigils had anything to do with this closing?" And the question transformed the doctor. This is from Jim. I asked the question. The question transformed the doctor from a soft-spoken man, weary to the bone at the end of a long day's work, into one who practically bolted out of his chair and screamed, "Absolutely! I can tell you with certainty that without you people outside praying, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Yes, sir. One of my favorite stories. It's great. And you can read about Jim Ball in the beginning of the end of abortion. It's a super fun chapter, but he is him telling that story is, it's not as good as the actual story because the actual story is so good, but it's like 1A, 1B. So
I think the bottom line here is Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry are struggling because insurance companies don't value abortion enough to pay for it. The customers don't value abortion enough to pay for it. The donors now don't value abortion enough to pay for it. And now the government itself, even in Washington state, doesn't value abortion enough to pay for it. And then you add 40 Days for Life to the mix, and it just sort of maybe the straw that breaks the camel's back.
So we're looking at absolutely, but the which we've done. I think I know I'm tired of abortion pill podcasts. I think the listeners are too. But the abortion pills are the problem, but it's not the mail order abortions. And this is a stat we've shared with people because they don't understand the regulation of just. They see an Amazon. Most people see an Amazon truck and think it's loaded down with abortion pills.
Sure,
driving across the country distributing them, and like there's no stopping it. That's not true. Physical locations still account for 80% of all abortions. That is, I think, shocking to the listener because everybody thinks, no, they're just closing these brick and mortar facilities because that's like 10% of the abortions. The other 9%, they just go and they put in a quarter and abortion pills pop out. And that's not the case. It's 80%. That's why the closures matter. That's why we're doing a podcast on why abortion facilities are closing. The Guardian.
They're back.
I like them more every day. Here's what they said. There is no real replacement of abortion clinics, which provide surgical abortions when medication is not an option. The other thing, and we've talked about how abortion pills don't have a good word of mouth. And so I think we're sort of at the height of that. But what people can't remember is abortion pills were not very common for a while. They were like 20% of all abortions for a very, very long time. Now, when Biden deregulated them during COVID and then really deregulated them with the fall of Roe and they became a pack of M&Ms, it went up to like 60%. But it's going to be interesting to watch that.
Another great quote here from the abortion industry itself. Executive Director of Feminist Women's Health Center. This is an abortion facility. Kwajalen Jackson. Medication abortion is not for everyone.
You think?
Why would they say that? Yes, it is. The message has been, yes, it is.
Exactly.
Especially for, to me, it's always my favorite because we've done the eugenics podcast. The vulnerable communities. Who are those? Well, you know. No.
The populations that we, quote, don't want too many of. Thank you, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
We need to get rid of them blacks and Mexicans. Is this microphone on? They've got a lot of that going on. It's really, And this, if you have not listened to it, you've got to go back to our eugenics podcast where we cover that in detail, and you will. I don't want to say you'll be uplifted, but you'll be definitely educated, and I promise you may have a laugh or two about it, and you probably will cry. You should do both during the eugenics podcast for sure. So please send us any questions you have from this at podcast@40daysforlife.com. Maybe post some stats that you may have of your local Planned Parenthood on the YouTube page if you're watching us on YouTube. Otherwise, email feedback, which can end up on the podcast. So, you'll be famous. So email us at podcast@40daysforlife.com. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ramona. And we will see you next time. God bless you.